Hello, guys and gals, me Mutahar, and ladies and gentlemen, that 51st state of Canada is about to look like a reality. Ladies and gentlemen, this is one of those weird things where, about a month ago I made a video where it's like, it's about to get real bad. And I was looking at the start of a trade war between Canada and the US, and normally I don't really talk about this kind of stuff, but it does actually end up personally affecting everyone here. And when you can't stop hearing about something every 20 seconds, like every day, it all appears to get just worse and worse. Yeah, it's got to be talked about. It's got to be discussed, okay? So as you all know, I'm a Canadian, okay? I'm from the land of the maple leaf, maple syrup, and all that good stuff. And for the longest time, I have been great friends with my friends down south. I actually live like an hour away from the border, and it's a pretty good time. I actually go back and forth a fair bit. There's good friends of mine that live in Buffalo. I go there, they come here. It happens, okay? It's a life, all right? It's part of that experience. But unfortunately, in recent times, it really seems like I don't have to cross the border that much anymore. Because the guys down south might just end up taking over Canada. Much like the Fallout franchise where Canada was annexed by the United States and people were just shot in the head in that franchise. Okay, it wasn't exactly a peaceful annexation. We didn't just bend over, spread our ass cheeks and tell you, yeah, please fuck us repeatedly. No, it was actually pretty violent in that game, okay? People don't really talk about it all that much. But yeah, it is what it is. That's kind of how it seems to be in reality land, especially when an annexation happens. Now, if you look into the actual polls, you might be like, but Muta, what if the people in the Maple Leaf land want to be Americans, okay? Now, to give you an idea, there are some people that probably do. In fact, I've even joked about it, but the thing about jokes is I never expected that joke to eventually, maybe one day, be a possible serious reality. There was a recent poll done by the Angus Reid Institute where they actually said that 9 in 10 Canadians unanimously said we should not join the US. What a shocker. Bunch of people love their sovereignty. I know, really wild indeed. But, every single, other day, the president of the United States, I wouldn't even be making this video if it had just been, some fucking no-name dipshit, okay? That happens all the time, all right? I'm sorry to say. There are dumb crackpot nut jobs everywhere. But when the largest person in the room, when the highest dude in the room is saying it, yeah, it's a little worrisome, okay? So I want you to listen to this one right here. We as Canadians, we've been listening to this shit like every other day, okay?
And to be honest with you, Canada only works as a state. It doesn't. We don't need anything they have. As a state, it would be one of the great states anyway. This would be the most incredible country visually. If you look at a map, they drew an artificial line right through it between Canada and the U.S. Just a straight artificial line. Somebody did it a long time ago, many, many decades ago, and makes no sense. It's so perfect as a great and cherished state. Keeping "O Canada," the national anthem. I love it. I think it's great. Keep it. But it'll be for the state, one of our greatest states. Maybe our greatest state.
Wait, hold on. Now, on one hand, for the last month, we've been told we're a cuckold, lip-tard state that nobody wants, okay? Nobody would like it. We have nothing to offer. They've got nothing to give. And then all of a sudden, if they become part of it, they might be the greatest state. Now, of course, for Canadians who are like, whoa, would you become like a voting state? I don't think anyone in that country would want Canada to be a voting state. Okay, do you want another California? Do you want another liberal bunch of people voting? It ain't gonna happen, all right? I've lived in the US. I've learned about how voting works over there. If anything, they'd probably make us Guam 2.0. They'd probably keep us like Puerto Rico, just a territory, not necessarily a state, I would say. I don't think we would agree to it, but then again, when it comes to the threat of annexation, the US military is such a strong army that I'm pretty sure they can take on every single army in the world. Probably at the same time. So yeah, it really wouldn't be our decision making, okay? It would just be the choice of the person attacking. Now, when he talks about the line as well too, to give you an idea, a little parallel is the War of 1812, for instance, right? When the US was fighting against the United Kingdom and a lot of its allies. And the origin for this war was often discussed with trade restrictions introduced by Britain to impede American trade, the impressment of seamen on US sea vessels, But this is the most important one: a possible desire by the US to annex some or all of Canada. And of course, I wanted to look at, how the fuck did we decide our boundary wall, okay? I actually think this is an interesting concept. How do countries decide that where the line begins and where it ends, right? Who decides how much land we have? And based on this one example here, all right, from Canada, the Canadian Encyclopedia, October 20th, 1818, a British-American convention clarified the western border between Canada and the United States as a line from the farthest northwest point of the Lake of the Woods to the 49th parallel, and then west of the Rocky Mountains. And of course, it then get decided more and more and more and more and more, right? To the point where basically over 100 years through international border agencies, through like deciders, we basically put down exactly where our land begins and where it ends. Through several wars and decisions, we have both collectively come basically deciding where we should put our lines. This is not somebody drew an imaginary line. We decided this through the course of several years. Now, there's been other bits of misinformation that I've been seeing posted around about it, with obviously related to the reason why all of this happened in the first place. So for anybody that doesn't know, we have tariffs on Canada and back and forth. In fact, they were kind of pussyfooting around this. For one day they got introduced, the Americans removed it a couple days later. So it's dude, just shit or get off the pot, okay? Either fuck us in the ass or stop tempting it, okay? Just do it or don't. And one of the big realities of it was obviously the funneling of a drug known as fentanyl. Now, to give you an idea, Canada was responsible for a very minuscule amount of said fentanyl coming in. In fact, ever since the first bout of those tariffs and us actually increasing our security, that number ended up dropping all the way down 97% to less than 14 grams. And this information is not information that Canada has made up. This information comes from the US Customs and Border Patrol Agency, okay? You can read this information from yourself. It comes from the US. A lot of people have said that, oh man, Canada's not doing enough. Bro, when stuff comes into your country, it is your border agency's responsibility. If they're not doing their job, I would imagine you should get your own house in order. At this point, I'm pretty sure Canada imports more illegal fentanyl than the other side. But honestly, I really do wish that this drug was just stopped overall. Fentanyl is really, really scary. Really spooky. One of the actual unrelated topics to this video I covered was the end of an era where I looked at, YouTubers who were doing angry reviews. One of them was a guy named Silent Rob, and his life was effectively destroyed because of this drug. It's just that when this drug you take, it has such a hold on you that it's almost impossible to get rid of. If I could remove this illegal drug from existence, the illegal use of it, I 100% would. And of course, when you go back to security on that border, even though we've basically capitulated and given everything that the Americans wanted, it's still not enough. So realistically, it's just making it make sense. What do they want? Now, the big thing about this whole situation is you probably noticed that Canada's been getting rid of all that American booze. So for me to go get some Jack Daniels is just not going to be happening all that easy, okay? A lot of that American stuff is removed, and I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't like this level of disturbance between countries that really should just be friends, okay? It is actually kind of just sad to really talk about. But Canada responded, and we pretty much are not bending over, all right? Now, obviously, look, Canada is far weaker than the United States in its military and its trade, but if it's one beautiful thing that I've seen kind of kick out of this is Canadians have kind of unified together. And I've actually, I do grocery shopping. I go out and I actually shop for my groceries. Okay, it's a very adult, normal thing to do. And every time I go there, there's a very, very big stance every time you go to the grocery store to buy Canadian. In fact, if anything, it's pretty much just shown in magic, giant lettering that this is a Canadian product and that's a product from the old down south. And it normally never used to be like that, but Canada has made a concerted effort to at least support ourselves, even though it's mostly a battle of attrition. And the more and more I read about our retaliation, it definitely is something we're doing because we're all just inspired. We are a country that is proud of ourselves, and honestly, I don't think Canada wants to see itself ever dissolved, which is actually pretty heartwarming to see. Now, even amongst all these tariffs, there have been other pieces of misinformation. I saw this entire list of tariffs that Canada has placed on America as hey, they're doing it to us, fuck you. And then I started to look even closer into that. And the reality of it is, even entire international organizations say that that's wrong. It takes one search to clarify this. For instance, the International Dairy Foods Association actually did talk about this. So in one situation regarding those tariffs that Canada put on, the actual IDFA said it is accurate that Canada imposes a tariff of approximately 250% on US exports of certain dairy products into Canada, and even more with those 25% retaliatory things that we put on top. However, the tariffs would only apply if we were able to reach and exceed a quota on the US dairy exports agreed to under the USMCA Act. Now, for anybody that has no idea about this act, Trump is the one that wrote it. Like, dog, you made one of the greatest trade deals of all time, and now we're backing off on it. What the fuck? Frustratingly, the US has never gotten close to exceeding our USMCA quotas because Canada has erected various protectionist measures, which we've always have done. In fact, these measures existed for a long time, and they were agreed for by the greatest salesman in the world, okay? It's really hard to do his voice. But yeah, it's just insane that we're reneging on a deal that was apparently supposed to be one of the greatest trade deals of all time. The U.S. trade area is grateful for the Trump's administration to hold Canada accountable for these protectionist measures. At the same time, a prolonged tariff war with our top trading partners will continue to create uncertainty and create costs. And it really is. Like, it's a bad situation for every side involved. Now, obviously, I don't think that a tariff is terribly the worst thing ever made. In a lot of ways, if you want to protect your own country and your own things, like the US clearly does, it's good to have. But destabilizing these relationships that exist between both countries is just never a good look. It's never good. And a lot of the talk about annexations, right? Like, there's even more clips. I showed you one, but here's another one right here. As this trade war was escalating, effectively Trump's posting around based on Ontario, Canada, placing a 25% tariff on electricity coming into the US. I have instructed my secretary to add an additional 25% tariff to 50%. It's like reading somebody play fucking Civilization. Dude, it's crazy. Canada must immediately drop their anti-American pharma tariff from 250 to 390. You agreed on it. You wrote this. You said it was the greatest trade deal. What the fuck? I will shortly be declaring a national emergency within the threatened area. So, you know, when you start reading things like this, again, like I said, if it was some random dipshit nobody, like, who gives a fuck, right? But if it's the President of the United States, then we gotta be a little bit concerned, okay? Your brilliant anthem, O Canada, will continue to play, but now representing a great and powerful state within the greatest nation that the world has ever seen. You know, and the thing about it is, it's like having like crazy tariffs like this is basically a way to destabilize this country to the point where I really do think that the end goal is basically making us hungry, poor, and completely destitute, and just basically forcing us to effectively be absolved. And the thing about it is, look, you know, the scariest case scenario, and I really do think a lot about war and like end of the world scenarios and shit like that, like end of it all. 90% of this country lives by the border, okay? It really isn't that difficult for the Americans to come over with their army and do shit that they need to. But one thing that I have seen about Canadians is they're not afraid to really be fighting back. One of the interesting things is, as I signed up for my gun license, and this is a while ago, you in Canada, in order to get like RPAL licenses, you have to take like actual courses. You have to actually go to like a gun, you have to do like a CFSE course. You have to actually know firearms and safety. And generally those classes you have to apply and book with like private people so that they can like, you know, verify you, and then you actually go do the paperwork to get your RPAL licenses or PAL licenses, whatever the Canadian gun license you need. And those classes have been like booked up. People are fucking actually back into like getting firearms, which is probably one of the cooler things that I'm seeing. 90% of this country does not want to be an American. And honestly, if shit comes down to it, goddamn, at least it sounds like we ain't just laying down. And if we are laying down, it's going to be us pushing up daisies, because at least we kind of fought back against it. And that is just a weirdly depressing thought to think about, you know? Everything that Trump's saying, it's like a rapist talking to you. They just don't take no for an answer. But the reality of it is, it's like, this is not something that is easy to ignore. Like, people can think of it as like a joke down there, But like for people who live in Canada, for instance, who have to just keep like hearing this rhetoric every single day, and then obviously things are getting more expensive on both sides, anyways, too. So everyone's feeling the brunt of it, and especially for Canadians, seeing things deteriorate like this is never great. Like, I'm somebody that loves the United States. I have a lot of friends and family that live there. And to see the relations drop like a rock in literally just a month is probably one of the saddest things to see. And it's not the only ally, by the way, too. There's plenty of other allies, Europe, Japan, for instance, that are feeling the brunt of just crazy decision making. And it's just not a good situation to be in. Sometimes I wonder if this is like the end of the fucking world. Now, quote from Benjamin Franklin, it is the first responsibility of every citizen to question authority. I don't know if it's entirely, Ben Franklin's statement over here, but generally speaking, ladies and gentlemen, I really do think that, worst case scenario, I really don't think that there might be like boots over the actual like border. At least I hope not. God damn, that's scary. But daily when you hear this kind of rhetoric and you hear it constantly being normalized, it is something where I kind of wonder if people on the other side of the border are a little bit questioning as well too. There are some things that probably, shouldn't happen. And I like to imagine that people over on the other side of the border might choose to blink twice if ever asked to attack their neighbors. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been neighbors for decades, and I hope to remain neighbors for hundreds of years. And that's pretty much what it comes down to. It's such a wild situation, and honestly, I don't really like jumping into this era of like discussion, but honestly, as a Canadian and as somebody that has to see it, this video is more like a vent video to me. And I actually thought, based on a month and a half ago, things would actually maybe get better. But we're at like the lowest relations we've probably seen for a while. And it doesn't seem like it's turning around. Nobody's getting the picture. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and that's all I gotta say. I'm out.